So, you want to make a level in Super Mario Maker 2, but you don't know exactly where to start, or you just want tips or just ideas from a person who has built plenty of levels before. So, I am Storm. I've built plenty of levels in Super Mario Maker 2. I've uploaded at least 2 Super Worlds before. I've taken one down to upload the second version. Currently trying to work on the third version. I tend to make very difficult levels, but I can explain pretty much everything to making levels today within about 2 hours, so there will be timestamps for what you need in the description, which you can click on to get to the part that you need. Okay, let's start off with basics once this level gets destroyed. So, when you first boot up into Mario Maker, at least the Maker mode, you have plenty of options. I'm currently playing on TV, but if you're playing touchscreen, you can just tap the buttons up there, in addition to the regular controls. So, the first thing that you can do is you can change the style. So styles change what type of Mario you're playing. So you can choose from your Super Mario Bros. The original game, Super Mario Bros. 3, World, Super Mario Bros. U, or you can pick Super Mario 3D World. Super Mario 3D World is not compatible with the other game styles, so if you already have something placed and you try to switch over to 3D World, it's going to prompt you with this message and it's going to delete everything. Right? Now, you have all of these styles off available to you from the very start. I'm going to switch back to Super Mario Bros. U for this one, and we're going to talk more about styles. So each style has its own gameplay. So Super Mario Bros. 1, you cannot wall jump. The amount of controls that you have are very limited compared to something like Super Mario Bros. World or Super Mario U or 3D World. So in 3D World and in U, you can jump off of walls. However, in the other styles, you can't. Where you can wall bounce from wall to wall, and then you can throw in the air. That's only something that's unique to both 3D World and U. In Mario World, you can spin off enemies. So, for example, I'll place an enemy here. In Mario World, you can spin off an enemy. You can spin off them if you press the ZR key. So you can spin off them, but you can't jump off walls. So that's something to keep in mind. When you're building your levels, you should design them for the world, for the style that you're playing them in. So if you're making a level in, for example, let's just say Super Mario Bros., the normal version, you wouldn't want a level based around walls. It's going to be more platforming, but no wall bouncing. You're going to have to physically implement the tools to make your character move from wall to wall within your item section. We'll also talk about course teams. So there are 10 course teams. So you have ground, sky, underground, forest, underwater, ghost house, airship, desert, snow, and castle. Ground is the default theme. Each theme has its own different music. Sky starts you up in the sky, obviously that's what we're in right now. Underground is underground. Forest is in the forest, but forest adds the water mechanic. So the water mechanic, you can change the water level. So if you hover over this semicircle and you lift it up, this lifts up the water to the maximum height it could possibly be, starting from a point underneath. You can make it go up once. If you tap it again, you can make it go up and down. If you hold over it, there's a speed dial here, so you can make it go slow, medium speed, or very fast. Alternatively, if you want to raise the base water level but not actually have the water level change at all, you could just do this and lift up the bar so the water level is at this constant rate, is at this constant ceiling here. You could also make it so where your water level decreases from a height and can come back up, or permanently goes down. So if you want to make a lava level, for example, if we were to switch over to castle, you can make parts of the stage accessible this way. So when you open through a door or go through a pipe, the lava automatically starts at this level. However, as the player keeps playing, the lava will slowly go down and the level will become more accessible to them. That's the basics about styles and course themes. Obviously, if we go to different styles, they're all going to look different, and they're all going to play slightly differently. The next thing I'll mention is night. So, the night theme changes these base themes here and changes how the game basically plays. So in the castle, for example, castle night allows you to swim, but everything else is normal. When you play ground night, some items change. So for example, the one-up mushroom turns into this poison mushroom, which can kill you. It does follow you around. So, depending what type of style you want, if you want night, you can change how different styles work. So, if I want to do an upside down level, it doesn't seem upside down now, but if I actually play the level, underground night gives you underground level. These are quite difficult because the controls are not necessarily changed, but because you're used to playing Mario right side up, it's going to be difficult to move around. So these types of levels are more difficult just in general, but that is one gimmick change. Additionally, in snow environments at night, the ground is actually slick. So there's ice mechanics. There are ice mechanics on the ground for snow night versus snow day where there's no ice mechanic. So, during the day, there's no delay to your movement, but at night there can be. So choose whatever style you want to. Now there are two styles that do change more at night in terms of like darkness and just overall game features. We already mentioned some, but Desert, Underwater, and Ghost House, they have pretty drastic changes at night. Sky also does have changes, however the main change in Sky is that you get low gravity at night. So when you have low gravity night, you basically get a space theme. So you're basically in outer space where your character has a higher jump height and everything else just generally moves slower. But if we do Underwater or Ghost House, it doesn't really matter which one. When we go night, you can make purely black levels where it's pitch black and you rely on lighting sources to move around. So these could be good for horror levels. If you wanted to know some good ideas for lighting, P-switches are good lighting, burners are good lighting. We'll get into more of these later, but if you're playing a darkness level, you want to have some amount of light to help out the player move around, just to make it fair. I'll show Ghost House as well. Oh, I didn't mention this. For Forest, if it's nighttime, the water changes to this poisonous soda, which acts similarly to lava. So basically, Jungle Night, you basically get lava, but in the jungle, if you like that. And like I mentioned, for Ghost House, it's pretty much the same. It's still darkness, but not much else changes in the Ghost House. And the last place that really changes is Desert. Desert at night, and this actually does depend on what style you're picking. Desert at night has wind. In Super Mario Bros. U, it's a pretty constant wind. If we change the style, the wind should change. Now, unfortunately, you cannot change the direction of the wind manually. You have to pick a style that's meant for that. But in Super Mario Bros. World, the wind does change directions. So you can make some pretty cool level ideas behind this. I believe in the other styles, the wind, if I check, is usually in one direction, which is usually towards you. So in SMB3, it's from the left, but it's pretty constant, but then it does come from the right? Or does it just keep coming from the left? Yeah. So depending on what style you do pick, if it's SMBU, then it's constantly from the left. The wind's always going to be pushing you forward, unless you make a reverse level. If you're in Super Mario Bros. World, it's alternates. And if you're in this style, SMB3, then The wind pushes from the same direction, but it's intermittent. It's not always a constant. So, now with that out the way, I've pretty much explained night themes. So let's get back into it. We'll switch back to SMBU here. So, now we need to go over the basic control scheme for actually baking levels. So, this tab up here is your item tab. If you hold down A, you can pin an item or a character or whatever you need to your taskbar so it never goes away. Because if you don't, when you click a new thing here and you start placing it, it replaces items up here that are not pinned. So in my case, I have ground pinned, I have coins pinned, and I have pipes pinned as well as slopes. You can pin whatever you want to. There's no real limit to how much you can pin. So I'd pin as much as you need to. There's also this Y function here. So if you press Y, you can search for all the enemies that you have available to you. I believe at launch, all of these should be available to you right off the bat, so you can begin placing no matter what. So if you want to start like a block level, you could just start playing. You should just start placing blocks around if you wanted to. And that's the basics for like placing. It's just A to tap place, and then you hold A when you're moving to keep it moving. To keep it going, even if it's over maybe a semi-solid, which we'll get into. If you press L, you get this eraser, and you can erase blocks, coins, or semi-solids, anything. You can't erase your character. It would be funny if you could, but you can't do that. Now, other things, you have undo dog. So, undo dog undoes your last action. So, if I were to erase these 4 blocks here, if I undo, they come back. So if you make a mistake that you don't think is easy to correct, just hit B to undo what you just did. And as always, you hit the reset rocket down here if you want to completely renew your level. Now, to change the length of your level, the G stands for your goal. You can move this as far back as you want. There is a max limit here, but levels, if you build a level well enough with enough content, levels can easily take over 6 minutes. But this running distance here is about 30 seconds. Now the starting position, you cannot move that. However, you can move the height of it. So you can start down, and you can move the height up as much as you want, up until about here. One thing to note though is that you can't place anything within this box around the player. So there's this 3 block area around the player which you can't place anything directly in there. But you can place maybe a thwomp, for example. You can place a thwomp above the player, so when they spawn in, it will land on them. You don't want to be evil like that, but that's something that you can do. If you hold the minus button, you can play from the start of your level. And the level will basically play as you normally would as the actual player who loads into your course would. Online, or if you're playing a Superworld, for example, that you downloaded the course, maybe. Additionally, there's other options. So we have auto scroll, timer, clear conditions, co-op making, and Mario's Trail. I won't get into co-op making today because I don't have another person with me. But if you have 2 Joy-Cons and you can actually have them paired, you can do co-op making and make a level with another person. The controls are pretty similar for that. We'll go over Mario's Trail first. Mario's Trail basically tracks the movement of your character. So this is good if you're making a platforming level and you want to see what is possible for your character to do with a certain speed and with a certain jump height. So Toad's maximum jump height in this circumstance is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tiles over the ground. Anything higher than this, and Toad will not be able to make it from this distance, because this is where his max height is. Now, you can keep that in mind when you're building a platform level or making a level that has shell jumps or anything that's hyper complex, so you know where the player is going to land, so you know where to place an indicator. We'll get into indicators later, but an indicator basically would be a block, not a door. It wouldn't be a door. It will be a P block, for example, the open one, to indicate where the player should be going, and then the player should go there. Or people do this with tracks, where they place tracks, and they tell you the button to use. Usually, if it's a spin jump, they say Z, and people usually know what that means. Another thing, for blocks, if you hold over them, you can add attributes to them. Now, you can't add items to them through this method. To add items, you'd have to put them into the block, and that's a different story. We'll get more into that in a little bit, but that's just a little tidbit for the next section. Now, timers and auto scroll are very important, as well as clear conditions. So timer, for example, here, timer is how much time that your player actually has to play. So this is in seconds. So 500 seconds is your maximum time, and 10 seconds is your minimum time. Standard time is around 300 seconds, or about 5 minutes. But you can lower this or change it how much you want, depending on what type of level you're building. If you're making a speedrun level, you want this to be lower. If you're making a long level that's going to require a lot of retries, it's very complex, maybe it's a puzzle, you want a higher timer. For the purposes of this video, we're not going to change the timer. We'll go over auto scroll as well. So auto scroll has 4 main features, but there's another feature to this that's not shown yet, which we'll get into with the Subworld section. There's no auto scroll, which we're in right now. So no auto scroll basically means the game only scrolls when your player is moving. So when your player is moving in a given direction, whatever that direction may be, the scroll will move that way. Slow auto scroll would mean that the game will automatically scroll the screen to the right, and your player does not affect the scroll at all. If the player moves too far to the left, they will eventually get pushed away by the auto scroll, and they cannot advance too far to the right. But this auto scroll also can act to crush players. So if you have a wall, but not a wall that goes all the way up to the ceiling, but if you have like a simple wall that a player can't get out of, they can easily get crushed. So there's slow, normal, and fast. You can choose for yourself which one you want for your level. So we'll start with slow. I don't actually have a level here, so hold on. Let's actually make a level. You have to press OK to lock it in. So slow will slowly move your level to the right. But that's just slow. Fast, if we do a comparison, you're basically zooming. This is a speedrunner's level. This level is very good as a timer just to keep people on their toes and make sure they're actually moving and completing the course. Otherwise, if they don't do that, they can easily get crushed or left behind. There's also the custom auto scroll feature, which allows you to drag the bird, not from the start, but allows you to drag the bird using these buttons here to drag where the scroll will be. So you could place A, well no, can you? Yes, you can place A here and then drag the scroll here. So then the scroll will move to wherever the bird is, and if you click the button here, you can change the speed of the scroll to whatever you'd like it to be. So if you like this kind of stuff, you can do that. Now you can do this for as many times I think as you want. I don't think there's an exact limit. Let's see. There's a limit of about 10 auto scrolls. So you can only place about 10. So if you're making a custom level where you want players to follow a specific path, just note that you only have 10 auto scrolls available to you. As for everything in this game, there is a limit to what you can actually do, just so there's not any lag that can occur. For now, though, we will delete this custom auto scroll and get rid of it. Now, on to clear conditions. Clear conditions require the player to have have met criteria to be able to reach the goal. So, for example, if you set the clear condition to be Super Mario at the goal, if your player is not in big form, specifically, they will not be able to hit the goal. But if they do have it, then they can hit the goal, if that makes sense. There are a lot of different clear conditions, so you can make many different types. So you can make clear conditions that go over... You can make clear conditions that go over damage. You can make clear conditions that go over how many enemies that are eliminated. You can also make clear conditions based on if you leave the ground or not. So there are a lot of different possibilities that you can use that can pretty much determine how you want your level to be. So I would say that depending on what type of level you're going for, make a clear condition that makes sense. But also you have to recognize that if you have a clear condition, you can't place checkpoints. So if you have a checkpoint already placed, it automatically deletes it if you put in a clear condition into your level. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. If you're making a very long level, you want to make sure that if you do have checkpoints, or if it has a clear condition, you want to make sure the clear condition is not too difficult, because that means that the person wants to start all the way from the beginning. Or if you don't care about that and you want it to be a challenge, you can make it so people start from the beginning. But do have to keep in mind that some levels can be very unforgiving in how you develop them. So some clear conditions may be better suited for each type of level, I would say. Give me 1 second and we'll get into the next part. Okay, I'm back. So, that's basically clear conditions explained. Now, for parts you can only have available if you have enemies within the stage. So, you need to have an enemy placed to eliminate them. Now, what does eliminate mean? Eliminate means the enemy dies. That does not necessarily mean they fall off the edge of the map, however. So, for this Bob-omb, let's set the clear condition. Here. That helps you defeat the clear condition. However, if I put Bob-ombs in here and defeat all 10 Bob-ombs here, this is a different challenge, because if they fall off the edge, it doesn't count as them being eliminated. So we'll wait, we'll jump over them. No, so if they go off the edge, that doesn't count as them being eliminated. So you actually have to physically hurt them to make them go off the edge. Otherwise, the timer will just keep going on and on forever. But that's clear conditions explained. So clear conditions, if you want to remove them, you go to this remove section, press A. Now, if we add in a power-up to this stage, the status should also be available. So when we say reach goal Super Mario, this is what we mean. So for all clear conditions, you need to have either the enemy on the map, or you need to have the item in the map somewhere available for the clear condition to be a thing. So that's the basic controls explained. So we explained basic controls. Now we can actually explain level design. So as we're going for level design, now I can start to begin talking about some important things you want to keep in mind. So if you want, so we're going to start with items first. For items, you can place as many as you want until there's a limit. But if you want to make it so where items require you to have a previous item to obtain them, for example, a mushroom, what you can do is you can add a mushroom to them. So this basically tells the game if player is Super Mario, spawn a flower. Else, if player is not at least Super Mario, then spawn something, then spawn a mushroom. But you cannot do this with other power-ups. You can only do it with mushroom. So in our case, if we just spawn right in, which are small, it's all mushrooms. But if we make ourselves Big Mario by hovering over us, adding the mushroom, then we can see the separate items. Now this is a good thing good way to do, a good thing that you can do for checkpoints. So if you pull up a checkpoint here, which is in your Gizmo section, you can pull up a checkpoint. These take up 4 slots. And then if you want, you can add this here and then attach that to the checkpoint. So now the checkpoint, what you get from the checkpoint is dependent on what your current character status is. So because I'm Big Mario, or Toad in this case, I get fire. But let's say we get rid of that, we just get a mushroom. There's a lot of different ways that you can design that, but that's one way that you can use items. Now, items, there are item blocks here. The question block normally only has coins, but you can place the power-ups within them. You can place whichever one you want. You cannot place key coins inside of them, but we will get into those later. But you can place enemies, so if you want to place a Goomba, you can do so. If you want to place... Well, you can't place a Thwomp. If the enemy's too big, you can't place it in there. But for most enemies, you can place them inside. Except for a Pokey. But for most enemies in general, you can place them inside blocks to troll players, or to set up the rest of your level. So if you have a music level, or you have a path level where an enemy is required to walk over a certain amount of pathway. So for example, maybe something like this, where now you need to get a mushroom from here, right, to break through, let's say, these blocks here. You can make an enemy spawn in there, and then they walk up to it. Don't even make this too complicated, but they can walk up to it. And then once they do, you get the power up. So now we restart the level. And now you hit this. You wait for the Goomba or whatever enemy that you have. And you can use that to create puzzles. Now, some other things about making levels, besides puzzle making. You have a lot of options available to you. So, we'll discuss actually placing the terrain now. So, we'll get rid of this example, and we're going to switch styles. Well, not styles, but we'll switch themes. So, we'll switch to snow, because it's hot where we are in the Northern Hemisphere. But if you're in Southern Hemisphere, it's snowing in some places. So, in terms of actually designing and placing ground, you can place ground this way. With A is simple, and then you can make cuts with it. So you can make simple structures. If you place ground long enough, you will eventually get these tiny decorative things in the background, which is aesthetics for the environment. You can use some buttons to copy paste these. So if you use MultiGrab, you can multi-grab a section of anything, and then you can grab it and move it somewhere else. What you can also do, however, is that you can copy this over, and you could do something like that. So you can have multiple of these, and maybe in some circumstances you can maybe use this as a puzzle, or to make people figure out a puzzle, or just for design, however you want to do it. You can also use this method to place a lot of land quickly compared to just drag clicking. So instead of doing that, all you have to do is press CL. After I build structure, all you have to do is press CL or ZR. Highlight this entire area that you want, and then you can click the left stick twice and enter view mode, and you can build like this. And this saves a lot of time. This was not something that's commonly mentioned in older videos, but this is something that you can do. So if you want to build things faster, and you don't want to have to do all that hard work to do so, you could just do this, and you'll be in a great position. And if there's something that you don't like that you want to delete, just like that, and undo just like that. That's all you have to do. Now we're going to undo this. Well, actually no, we won't undo it. We're going to cut into here, and we're going to make a level a little bit, because we're going to introduce vines here. Now for vines, you can place vines on any surface. These technically are behind the terrain, so if they get behind the terrain, you can't really change the height. So I'd recommend you having to move things out into the open, building them, and then placing them behind structures. Because these act similar to how semi-solids work, which we'll discuss right after this. So you can place a vine here and make it go all the way up. Or you can place them individually into blocks, where you have a vine that's already a predetermined length inside of a block that you can place here. And if there's no vine there, you can now use that to create the vine that you need to get somewhere. Now, if you ground pound down, the vine goes down. If you hit the block up, the vine goes up. So you can do that as many times as you want. Obviously, there's a limit to how many things you can place. But depending on your type of level, maybe it's a jungle level, or maybe it's a climbing level, whatever type of level you are building, you can make vines like this and lock them behind the blocks or objectives that you need to get to progress through the rest of the level. That is a good way to make good level design, at least if you're trying to build stuff. Now, vines also can act as an obstacle in a way, because vines prevent you, if you're not a certain size, from accessing stuff behind them. So let's cut down the vine size. This is something commonly used by professional level builders, where if your player is small, they cannot open the door because they get latched onto this vine. Whereas if the player is big, they can open the door. You can make plenty of levels like this where certain areas are inaccessible without using a key, by locking them behind items or making sure that you need a certain item to be able to progress. Now, that brings us into our next conversation, semi-solids. So semi-solids include bridges, semi-solid platforms, and mushroom platforms. These are semi-solids. Clouds you can also consider a semi-solid as well as donut blocks. Semi-solids are surfaces where you can jump through the bottom. They're in the background, but you could jump through the bottom, but you cannot enter them through the top. So for example, if I were to place a semi-solid platform here, this blends in with the background, and if you change the style, if you hover over them, you can change the style that you want. You can layer them over each other to make cool designs. It does depend how you do it, but I prefer dragging them over to give this 3D look to them. But you can stack as many as you want and make somewhat 3D shapes like this. But the main thing is that you can jump through them. You can jump through them, but you cannot go through them downward. That's not an option that you can do. Additionally, you can actually place level here. But what I would prefer to do, in most cases, is that you want to build your level. So you place your coins. For example, you place your enemies. So we'll use Koopas this time. You place your enemies. You place your blocks. Usually. You add your items. And then you can add, I guess, extraneous stuff that's not too important, but it's just for decoration. And you can do a decent amount with this. Actually, hold on. I think a smarter way to do this would be like that. And then you move this over, because you can stack it better that way. And now, if we respawn here, you have a good template to now put a semi-solid platform behind. And make it look just a little bit better. Now, semi-solid platforms, they do have a maximum height. I would recommend, if you're building a semi-solid platform, you want to place blocks above them so people don't get soft locked up here. Soft lock basically means the player has to restart from the very beginning, even if they have a checkpoint, or wait out the timer. So preferably, what you should do if you have a semi-solid like this is place blocks on top if there's blocks here. So if you have a situation like this, for example, the player can no longer get out, and the only method that they have is to restart, which is very annoying. But you can build semi-solid platforms like this. There is one caveat though. If you try to multi-grab something, trying to move it in. Well, actually, it didn't do it this time. But usually, what I've noticed, sometimes the graphics break. So, yeah, like that. Sometimes your semi-solids will break if you multi-grab multiple things onto them. So do keep that in mind, that usually you want to be placing... You will want to be placing any semi-solid platforms that you do have available last to finish off your level. So some good templates to have semi-solids in, just as a good background, would be Airship. For Airship especially, if you're building an indoor section, you want decent semi-solid platforms. You can build them in Ghost House, but you can build them pretty much anywhere. So we'll go back to Snow. But semi-solids are good for making your level look better, especially if there's a background that you don't like. So on Airship, it would happen to be the clouds behind it. So if you don't like that and you want to simulate your indoors, you build the level first in an enclosed space, then you place semi-solids on top of that to make it look better. Only issue with semi-solids is that if you want to place anything on top of that, you click on the semi-solid first. So that makes it more annoying to actually build the level. That's something to keep in mind if you're going to be building them in the future. Additionally, we have mushroom platforms, which you can stack on top of an existing semi-solid platform. And mushroom platforms come in 3 colors. They come in red, yellow, and green. And they do adapt to the environment that they're placed in. And then you have bridges. Bridges act as a 1 tile, even though they're half a tile, or a quarter of a tile really. They take up 1 full tile, and they basically allow you to go across, or like plug gaps, for example. So plug a gap like this, but you can't really place anything in it. You have to place it either above the bridge, because I'm trying to drag it through here. It's not allowing me to place them, but I can place coins underneath. So you can place coins like that. Or, if you can't place things directly in the bridge, which you can't do normally, you can place stuff underneath the bridge that can attack people through it, because it is a semi-solid. So, skewer here, the skewer goes through the bridge, but you can't go through the bridge and go to the skewer. That's not how that works. So that's that will be a basics of building a level. Now, there's some other things I haven't mentioned. Pipes and slopes. So we're talking about slopes. Slopes you can use to add sliding sections. So sliding sections will basically allow your character to have a new move. I believe pretty much every style except for the base style, Super Mario Bros., the original version, allows you to slide in some capacity. But sliding has 2 different slope values. You have gentle slope, which is a shorter elevation, shorter angle of decrease. So you have shorter slope here, where the slope's steepness is not as high as the steep slope. So it's not as hard to move up the slope. And steep slopes go faster than the gentle slope. But if you use a steep slope, these are better for getting speed. And if you place a pipe with an item and something's rolling down the hill, it will move a lot faster. Additionally, I didn't get to pipes yet, but you'll also have pipes in this game. So pipes are a returning feature from Super Mario Maker 1, but now you have more colors to them. The colors are actually quite important. So the colors of pipes dictate how fast items come out of them. So slow is blue, green is normal speed, yellow is fast, and red is extremely fast or very quick. So let's design a little bit more here, and then we can place some things in here. If you want the pipes to blend in with the environment, you want to at least make sure they have 4 blocks of ground around them. But now we're going to place stuff in them. So we're going to place, in this case, we will place... Oh, we'll place booze in this case. Stand out on this platform. Now in this case, they all come out at the same time. But we can use a different character for this. Goomba, because these are spammable. And you can see the difference here. The red one is just spawning one pretty much every second, whereas the other 2 are waiting a while to spam Goombas. So, depending on what type of level you're making, if you're making maybe a P-switch jump level, where you have a pipe above the player dropping P-switches, for example, if you have this, and let's say it drops a P-switch, you can use that to jump to a new area. So for example, you can do this, and then you can maybe place one of these 10 coins, which if you hover over, you can get a 10, 30, or 50, and make it accessible this way. There we go. Now, actually doing a P-switch jump is quite difficult for this angle, but if you can do it, you can lock off areas or make it. You can make a challenge, especially if you're doing a level as lava, where you have a pipe and you drop P-switches into the lava that players can jump off of. That was the basics for ground and pipes. Other things about level design, I would say, you have spike traps. So if you want to stop a person from moving in a certain direction, you can use these to do damage, or as obstacles for people to avoid, to jump over, to reach a certain part of the level. These can be used in air levels. So for example, if you're running Super Mario World and you use the P balloon item, you can make an entire level dedicated to flying around spiky areas and avoiding them as a hobby. And you can add other enemies too. You can really do whatever you want. Now levels can get quite brutal depending on how you want to design them, but you can basically design almost anything. Spike traps are very good if you want to wall off an area, like I said, but also they do act as basically a ceiling too, as well. I don't believe they act as a wall, however, which we're about to get into. Walls, as we're about to mention, block off the field of vision. I don't believe these block off the field of vision. They do not. So let me show you how you can block off the field of vision. But walls block off field of vision. So if you have ground blocks, for example, it doesn't always have to be ground. It can be ice too, or these hard blocks. But if you have this going all the way up, at least one block layer going all the way up in a horizontal section, that stops the scroll. So the level cannot scroll beyond that point. So if you want to hide the rest of your level, you can just add a giant wall here, and then have people travel through pipes or doors to make sure that they see the level slowly as intended. You don't have to make gigantic walls as you once had to in Super Mario Maker 1. for example. Now, walls are not always going to work because if you have the wrong field of vision, whereas if you basically don't have this box here, it's basically a 20 by 20. Well, it's not 20 by 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's basically a 12. So if you don't have a 20 by 12 box, there is a chance that even if you have a wall, you're still going to have vision over it if it's placed incorrectly. But when you walk back outside a wall, vision, then the wall works again. Speaking of which, of walls and vision, what we're going to talk about, besides enemies, we're going to talk about pipes now. Pipes and subworlds, and this begins a new section. So, pipes. Well, we already talked about pipes, so we're going to talk about subworlds. Subworlds are one additional world that you can add to your Super Mario Maker level. For example, if you have a snow level, but you want to go to the desert, you can do that. Your subworld does not have to be in the current theme as what you have here, so it does not have to be in the current night theme. It doesn't have to be in the daytime. It could be at night. It could be in a different location, but it has to be in the same style. You cannot change styles in the subworld, unfortunately. And there's a limit of only one subworld. You can make the illusion that there are multiple subworlds by making multiple different segments of a level within the subworld or within the main world, just to confuse the player. But you can only have two. You can only have a main world, and you can have a subworld. You cannot have more than that. So, there are two ways to make a subworld. You can either make one using this feature here, which if you click on it, adds a subworld. And now when you open up a subworld, you have two options. You can choose an orientation for the sub area, which is horizontal, either horizontal or vertical. Now how do these differ? Horizontal basically means you have a simple level just like in the original where you're going from left to right. Vertical levels, on the other hand have limited left to right movement. So you only have about 2 boxes left to right, but you have that same horizontal length going up instead. So these are good for making sky tower levels, lava rising levels, for example, trying to outrun lava. These are good for castles if you like those. So we'll switch to vertical here, and you can do basically the same thing as you did in the main world, where you can just make it as large as you want, and it goes down quite far. Now, depending on what world style you're using, I think SMB is a perfect example of this. You basically simulate different elevation. You have different textures as you go up, so it looks slightly better as you go up. I think Desert's the best version of this. Desert's the best version of this because Desert changes the most as you go up, where you can make the player think, I'm going to a new area. So at the top of the desert, you have blue skies, and as you go down, it gets dustier and dustier and dustier and dustier. So what you could do is, you can make a level that starts at the bottom of the desert, and you slowly ascend up a mountain, you could say, and then the skies gradually clear. You're still in the desert theme, but it doesn't feel like it the higher up you go. So that's an illusion you can do if you want to. Now for these types of levels, usually you might want to place tracks. For example, we might want to place tracks, which we can get into. You can place tracks at the bottom. So maybe what you want to do. Also the fast travel, you click here and just fast travel like that. But for tracks, place a track, and then you can place something on the track. So you can place a bumper, you can place a seesaw. In this case, we're going to place a lift. And then you can make this go as high as you want. Ideally, you want to have wings on these so they go much faster. If you want the lift to only go when the player is on it, when the player touches it for the first time, you switch it to blue. Lifts on their own, when we place them out here, a blue lift will fall if the player touches it, whereas a yellow lift will just move in a given direction and then back to its starting position. It's not that complex compared to other tracks or other methods. Seesaw is of a similar blend where Seesaw is somewhat like the blue, but it doesn't fall out the sky. Instead, when you're on one side, weight is displaced. You can make levels based around this. So maybe a thwomp or anything heavy hits this side of the seesaw and it forces something up. You can make a boss fight based around this. This, for tracks, helps you with the lift. You can make track lifts around to transport people. Tracks have multiple different settings. So tracks also have, you can tap the edge, and then you have a free edge here, which allows a cart or whatever's on it to jump to the next rail. It's not that great vertically. It's much better horizontally, but you could do something like this, and then you can construct a puzzle this way. So you start on this track, and then the track cuts here, and you drop it off the track. Hold on. You drop off the track onto another track. You can make boss fights like this. You can make transport like this. There's plenty of possibilities you can do. You can use enemy homing attacks like this. Also, for tracks, when you hover over them, the edge, you have multiple options. So these switches here, these go into on-off switches, which we are about to get into right now. So on-off switches, basically, when you hit an on-off switch, allow you to change. Well, if you're in a dark map, which we'll get into, the light level changes. So when you're on, you have more light. When you're on off, you have less light. Hitting an on-off switch also, additionally, changes whether these blocks are on or off. And it can also allow you, when you're building tracks, to distinguish which track activates and which does not. So when you hit the on-off block, you get this. But as you hit it, you can change how tracks move. You can also change where blocks are placed. So you can also have enemies hit these, so these alternate on their own. You can make levels around this where you have to hit on-off blocks and move to a certain position within a given time. And then you can also use these tracks to just guide and move on and just keep going. Tracks, additionally, also have this feature where you can curve them, I believe. So, instead of having a straight line here, you can curve them if it's horizontal. So, you can curve them and make circles. Something like this. It has to be horizontal, unfortunately, but you can make circles. So if you want to make a circle level, you could do that. Just be careful what type of level you're building, and you'll be alright. That's how you make a circle. You would hold over a part of the track, a diagonal portion of the track, and you change it. Now, I don't believe you could do that for this. You cannot change it for the on-off one, so you can't make the on-off. Cannot make on-off tracks circular, but you can make non-on-off tracks circular. If you know a track is on-off when you see this pattern here, we have this red bulb here, and then if a leading track, and then you have two decisive tracks that you can make a choice on depending on what the on-off switch is. So that's the basics of tracks. You can place anything you practically want on a track. So you could place an item on a track. Snake blocks I don't think you could place on a track. I don't believe you could place them on tracks. Snake blocks you can't place on tracks, but snake blocks can have their own path. So snake blocks, for example, can have their own path like this. We can draw the path. They do have a limit to where they can go, but the path cannot cross itself. So you have to be wary of that. If you're making a snake block, you cannot have the path cross itself. It does not work that way. But you can make snake blocks go all the way up. And they do have a limit where they eventually stop. There is a fast variant of the snake block. This is a slow variant, which is green. Hold down, you get the fast variant, which goes way faster. You compared to the green one, which is like this. So depending on what type of level you're going for, you can use snake blocks to move around. Snake blocks are good if you're if you want to make an auto scroll level, because they're slow enough for that to occur. I'll talk about you can attach a lava lift to the track, so you can attach these the white skull ones. So the white skull track falls after a certain amount of time. The blue one does not. The blue one is a fast one that goes on forever. You can also attach grinders to tracks to change the direction. One thing I will say about tracks, if you're placing anything on tracks where you want a specific position, you do have to keep in mind that a player may look into an area where they're in render distance of a track, and then that part of the track moves. So by the time the player gets to that area, the orientation is completely wrong for where characters are supposed to be. So do keep that in mind. If you're going to be building a track, make sure that it's correct directly right after a player spawns into an area, not as a peripheral area later, because that can mess up how the track operates. Alright, but you can place pretty much almost anything on the track, whether it be an enemy. You can't place yourself on a track, but you can place almost anything on a track. You can place Bowser on a track if you want to. There is a limit to the amount of enemies you can place, but we'll get into those soon. So we'll talk about enemies within the next 4 minutes. But generally, for building tracks, you just want to make sure the theme that you're going for makes sense. How your building level is structured with that theme in mind. If you want to make a swing claw level where you're platforming from place to place, you can add that, or make swinging claws hold items or drop them on you, depending on what you're going for. Swinging claws can also move along tracks as well, so you can use these to carry items to a specific position. Swinging claws do open up when you're underneath them and they have something inside of them, so do be careful of that if you're a player. But if you're a maker, you can use that in place maybe a spike ball, something that Spike has, and then it will carry that until the player gets close, and it will drop it on top of them. Coins could also be carried. Fake coin can be carried. Pretty much almost anything can be carried. Additionally, there is ice. We'll talk about ice, and Twister we'll mention later. We'll talk about ice. We already mentioned checkpoints. And we'll talk about arrow signs. So, we'll mention these relatively briefly. Just have to delete everything here. Actually, we'll just move up. We don't have to delete anything. So, trampolines, arrow signs, power blocks. We already mentioned P-switches, but we'll bring them back here. Doors, keys, vines, and checkpoint. Those are all gizmos, as well as the skewer, bumper, grinder. Grinder is a circular disc that deals damage to you when you're inside of it. The bumper is the same as a grinder, but it doesn't do damage to you, it just bumps you away. Conveyor belts are good terrain, so if you want to have an automated level, or just have enemies consistently move to a specific location, or items as an item transport, if you want to make a level, if you're on item transport, like a factory, you can do this. So you have conveyor belts that go in specific directions. You can change their length by hovering over the circle. You can change your speed by either going for fast or going for slow. You can also change whether they change their direction based on on-off switches. You cannot change the speed, but you can change the direction. So if you have on-off switch and either something is off or on, then the conveyor belt will switch direction only in those circumstances. If you activate a P-switch, all conveyor belts will stop, no matter what type they are. So they will stop completely. So if you want to make a level where the factory stops, or where conveyor belt is necessary to be paused for the player to advance, you can make them you can force them to try and obtain a P-switch to stop force them to try and attain a P-switch to get advanced to the rest of the level. That's something that you can do. So I'll show that right here. P-switches basically just stop the conveyor belt. And then after this 10 seconds, the conveyor belt will restart as if nothing happened. For power blocks, as we have them here, power blocks emanate a shockwave that can be used to displace enemies, which stuff like Muncher, for example, which you normally can't get rid of, a power block is good against. You use a power block to hit these and then bring coins down, for example. Use them to bring down enemies. If depending on how you throw a power block, you can eliminate multiple enemies or just one. So I will do that test here. I believe it's for Munchers, but for Munchers we'll add 2 big ones. We'll do something like this. Depending how you throw it, power block may only kill 1, or it kills all of them. In this case, it killed 2. But you may need multiple power blocks in some sections. Additionally, I didn't mention this before, but the P-switch also does change coins into blocks, and blocks that have nothing in them into coins. Additionally, as I just used earlier before, you can use the P-switch to activate these P-blocks to reach certain areas. So if they're on, you can turn them off if a P-switch is activated. And for doors, if you activate a P-switch, you can make some doors only accessible when a P-switch is active. Otherwise, the door is invisible, is inactive, where it doesn't show up in this color, but it has a faint outline. In this case, you have this outline, but it reveals itself when you have the door. So you can make levels around that where the player activates a P-switch and then they have to run back to position to to get into this door quickly to advance to the next section. That's something that you can do. So you can do this and lead it into a pipe, where if you hold down the pipe and you click this down arrow, you go back to the main world or the subworld, depending on what area you're in. You can make levels like that using that method. And generally, that's how you use P-switches and all of these buttons right here. Otherwise, the skewer is good at breaking down blocks. So if you have a wall here, and let's say you have on-off blocks, for example, and let's say we need this skewer to break this path for us to move forward. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck here forever. So, what you can do is, you can make on-off blocks here, and then have a switch activate here to allow movement to be possible. For example. So, right now, the skewer can't hit anything. When we turn this off, the skewer can get rid of those. It's quite slow using this method. I believe using blocks is faster. Not hard blocks, but the soft blocks. These ones. So, if you want to break them easier, use soft blocks. If you want the player to wait a bit, use hard blocks. Thwomps are also good at breaking hard blocks, and they do it faster than a skewer can. But Thwomp is an enemy, so the player can kill them if they have the right equipment. Speaking of enemies, because we've pretty much covered everything in the Gizmo section, except for trampolines. So we can talk about trampolines as we talk about enemies as well as the key. So, with enemies in this game, just get rid of everything. Just delete it. Tear it up. Restart. Okay. So with enemies, there are a wide variety of enemies that you can choose from. They all have different attacks, and they all have different methods of being played. Being placed and being countered. So, for example, you have Goombas, which is standard enemies. But if you hold on a Goomba, you have multiple options. So you can turn them into a Goombrat. The difference is that a Goombrat on top of a surface like this will not fall off of it. They would just keep walking back and forth. But if it's a Goomba, they will fall off and continue walking. If you add wings to the Goomba, it will jump around higher for a little bit. And if you make it big, you make a big Goomba. And big Goombas split into two when you hit them. You can also add a parachute to enemies. So this is good especially in sky levels or any level that has a lot of air. You let enemies fall onto the stage, and then they become a problem. And the same thing for Koopa Troopas. Koopa Troopas can also fly. These ones walk around the floor, whereas these ones actually do fly up in the air. So red Koopa Troopas fly up in the air. And you can also use red Koopa Troopas to activate blocks, if you choose to, and kill other enemies. You can also spin jump off them. You can also spin jump off them, if I can get this guy down. You can spin jump off them to one-shot them, in this case. So if you spin jump off them, you can basically eliminate them instantly. The other enemies, we used the Spiketrap earlier. Spiketops walk around surfaces, so they can change direction if something's in the way, but you can have them walk around this pillar, and they'll always be hugging the walls, in this case. And if you hover over them, you get the fast version, which is the blue one. Adding them with wings, however, allows them to fly around the stage. So the ones that fly around the stage are a completely different beast compared to the other ones. The Buzzy Beetle, Spiny, and Spiketrap, when you add wings to them, they just fly across the stage. We also have the Cheep Cheep, and we have the Blooper here in the first column. So the Cheep Cheep has two versions. Green Cheep Cheep, which just goes in a set direction and does not follow the player. On dry land conditions, it will just jump through water or lava or poison or whatever it is. If it's in water, it will be swimming. If we have a red Cheep Cheep, the red Cheep Cheep after a certain amount of time will begin following the player. It will jump towards the player, compared to the green one, which does not. The Blooper is another enemy type. These are good for chasing people underwater. There are two types of bloopers. You have standard blooper, and you have blooper with babies. So blooper nanny. And then you can make them larger, so harder to escape. And you can make them have wings where they fly around. Bloopers with wings are very scary, and they can be used to quickly catch ground on the player. Bloopers, when you're not moving, when you're not jumping, for example, they will try to stay below you. They sometimes tend to stay away. They're pretty iffy in how they move. But if you jump on bloopers in the overworld, they die. But they're the only ones that can just fly around the screen no matter what happens. Now we have some additional enemies. On snow specifically, Spike doesn't throw spike balls anymore. He throws snowballs, which don't damage you, but do knock you back. Now we have our second row of enemies. We have Piranha Plant, we have Muncher, Thwomp, Monty Mole, Rocky Wrench. Rocky Wrench is best used in airships because that's where they're usually found. But you can use them anywhere. Hammer Bro and Chain Chomp. We'll go over to Piranha Plant first. Piranha Plant, depending on the style, can jump. So, for example, in Super Mario Bros. World, it jumps naturally. You don't need to add wings to it. However, in every other style, you need to add wings to the Piranha Plant for it to begin flying. And it will fly like this. It will jump up, hover in air for a little bit, and then come right back down. Now, Piranha Plant can be spin off of. So if you do ZR, could spin off a piranha plant, and you can use them to get to a higher location. You cannot kill them by spinning off of them. But that is the standard version. You can make them larger. You can also make them come out of pipes. Like most enemies can also come out of pipes. So you can make them come out of the pipe like that. And you can make them have fire. The fire ones I do not believe you can spin jump off of. You can. But it's more dangerous because they can spit fire. Speaking of which, we'll get rid of the wings. You have the piranha plant that spits straight fire at you. You can spin off these, but they're much more dangerous than their cousin. And you can spam, you can have a lot of them, just spam them. Now, rocky wrenches, they act a bit differently. Remember 70 solid platforms as I mentioned them earlier. So, they don't actually use those. They hop right through them. And then they stay in solid ground and pop up and then use screws against you. So you have an enemy here and it will just throw screws at you. Those can be very annoying if there's too many of them, and you can get quite stuck quite easily depending on what's being thrown at you exactly. If there's too many projectiles, you might have a problem. Compared to Monty Mole can be placed on the surface and they will chase you. They're a bit slow, but they will chase you. Or you can place Monty Mole in the ground. Place Monty Mole in the ground, they will dig up to the surface, they will jump out, and then they will begin chasing you. Thwomp, as we mentioned earlier, well, we didn't really mention it earlier, we showed it off earlier, but Thwomp has two directions. It can come, it can come down on you vertically and crush you, or it can do this and come at you from the side. You can do that, and additionally, if you add a parachute to it, it will come at you slower. So if you want to make Thwomp come at you slower and bait the player into jumping and losing a life, because you had a troll block somewhere, which we'll mention briefly here, invisible blocks. You can place an invisible block, the player can't see them until they hit them. You can add anything you want. Snowball maybe. Good place to hide secrets and hide dev exits if you like doing that. You have hidden blocks just hovering around, and you can also use hidden blocks to lock off areas. So you can have a hidden block placed here, but you could jump through them. Not from the bottom, but you could jump through a hidden block. So as you see, you can jump through them, but you cannot jump into them. If you jump into them, then you activate them. Otherwise, they provide no surface, and when they're not activated, people can just fall right through them. Now, icicles, they might not seem like enemies, but technically they are. They're more of a gizmo, but we can consider them enemies in this case. Icicles have two modes. Icicles have either the frozen mode, they don't move, where it's just a stage hazard. Remove these, where the icicle is just a stage hazard. Or the melting version, where they come down after a certain amount of time. Now, ice will shake the closer you are to it, and if you're too close, it will drop onto you. Now you could tell, a player could tell if there's ice above. So for example, we'll drop that there. By the water drop, it said drop down. So you could tell if there's ice above you or not. Ice can be broken through. You can jump through it if you're big. So let's use Fire Toad in this example. You You can jump through it, but it will cost you. Just like regular ice, it will cost you your health, unfortunately. Additionally, we'll go back now. We'll talk about twisters later. We have hammer bros, which hammer bros have a unique attack pattern where they will jump from surface to surface, and can keep going up endlessly or keep going down endlessly. And they can potentially jump off the edge as well. So we can add a hammer bro there. Hammer bros have this attack pattern where they throw a hammer one at a time every few seconds. They do alternate it, and they will jump from position to position. So they have a high jump, and they have a low jump. The low jump allows them to decrease the elevation. I need to see it in action, though, so people can understand what it looks like. That's the low jump. So they can switch. Elevation. You want to make sure that the level is actually designed so the hammer bro can actually reach these locations. So the hammer bro can actually jump up to this block or go underneath, and won't have any problems. Now, hammer bros have two variations. In Super Mario 3D World, they have another variation, which we'll get into. But big hammer bro can jump ground pound. They still throw hammers, but they can do a jump ground pound, which if you are standing on the ground as they do the jump, you get shocked. If you add wings to the hammer bro, they will throw hammers a little faster, but they'll jump a bit more. And they'll hover in the air for a bit before doing their attack. If you use just the regular hammer bro with wings, not that. They jump around and they throw hammers. So these could be quite the obstacle. And they can jump higher too because they have wings. Last thing I didn't really mention was the chain chomp in this section. The chain chomp has two main functions. You can jump with it. Oh no. You can use it in a way where you have the pedestal version, or you have the off the rail version where it's just chasing and running in one direction. You can spin off. You can spin off a chain chomp. If it's stuck in a position, it becomes free when you let it go from its little cave here. So when you bounce on it, the chain chomp becomes free. You can use this in a variety of levels. If you add wings to a chain chomp, it changes its playstyle pretty entirely, where it's now hovering around its little post. If you add that into a Koopa Clown car, it will chase the player, and it will hover around it and prepare for attack, and you can make it into a boss fight. Speaking of other enemies, so these enemies behave a little differently. Boo is normally will chase you if you're not looking at it. If you're at night in under some variations, the Boo will actually chase you if you look at it, and will not move if you don't look at it. Pokey changes to snow here and is overall less lethal. You can also use them as a weapon here. Magic Koopa has some tricks with them. So Magic Koopa has this trick where Magic Koopa can actually delete the goal and make it disappear. And the only way to get the goal back is to eliminate Magic Koopa. And the goal comes back. But you could do this in the castle, for example, and delete the goal. And just have it disappear. Now, you can add a pipe here to ensure that this always gets deleted in time. You could always ensure that could be a thing that you could do. Magic Koopa will fly around the map and will convert Well, not fly around that, but they will teleport around the map wherever their magic spell hits. If you have a block or a coin, it will convert them into an enemy or item. Generally. If the Magic Koopa has wings, it will also add wings to whatever it hits. So in this case, you get a coin. But if we add wings to the Magic Koopa, we'll get a flying object from this. It's a mushroom. Magic Koopa is good if you make levels with a lot of blocks or a lot of things that can change easily. That's one benefit of Magic Koopa. Fish Bones is a fish that targets you in the water. So when it sees you, it targets you and rushes towards you. Dry Bones is a simple Koopa Troopa in most modes. However, if we switch over to Mario World, Dry Bones becomes more powerful. Dry Bones in Mario World is much different than in others because it has the ability to throw bones. And those bones do damage. So if you want the most powerful Dry Bones you can and just want more objects just being thrown at the player, use Super Mario Bros. World Dry Bones. A bomb we already mentioned. Bomb has two modes. Bomb has normal mode where it's not infused, and then you have infused mode where it's already lit when it comes out of a pipe or when you first see it. Also make the bomb bigger, make it fly. When you make the bombs fly, they do just fly across the screen. And when they hit a lethal surface, they instantly explode. Bombs are great if you want to explode a wall to force so the player can actually move to another area. They're great for that purpose. Otherwise, bombs are just somewhat a run-of-the-mill enemy, but bombs are quite useful if you're trying to make a level based around puzzles, etc. How you want to build your level with the bomb depends on your style, but I would generally say if you have a bomb, you generally want to have puzzles in your level. We basically covered everything here. Wiggler, in this case, Wiggler in the sky dimension, the sky night dimension. Wiggler normally just walks across surfaces back to back, and if you jump on it and it gets angry, then it will chase you, but it can't jump off a solid surface. But Wiggler in Night Sky will fly around instead of walking on the surface. And Wiggler's cannot die to fire. They cannot die to being jumped on. You need a star or a hat to destroy them. If you had wings, they move a lot faster. But you could build an entire level around Wiggler being chasing you around. And have a lot of fun with it. Now, this is what Wiggler with wings looks like. Wiggler with wings is much faster. Much faster. But you can make this the boss fight if you wish. A lot of cool things to discuss. Now, Lakitu throws out enemies. So if I place a bomb in here, Lakitu will just throw it out. And it will slowly fall out. Well, this is low gravity, so it will fall out faster under normal conditions. But Lakitu will just continue giving enemies away. But if you give Lakitu a coin, for example, then Lakitu has an expiration date. So Lakitu will give you coins, but only about 3 times. And then they run out and escape because they don't want to help you. But they have infinite enemies for you. Lakitu's cloud can also be... You can also remove Lakitu from the cloud. Well, additionally, you can remove him from the cloud. And you just have a cloud now. And you can place anyone in the cloud. So you can place Bowser in the cloud. If you want. You can place almost anything in the cloud. Now, as for Bowser and Bowser Jr., there are limits. You can only place about 3 of them per level. Bowser has some changes where if you add wings, they will sometimes throw hammers. I think that's only if they're in. I think that's only if they're in the Koopa Clown car, which Koopa Clown car itself has 2 different settings. So you have basic and you have fire. The fire one allows you to shoot fire, but also allows the enemies to shoot fire as well. Fire is usually better for a lot of levels, I would say. And Bowser, when he's in the Koopa Clown car, he can throw out bombs. As well, he usually throws out 4 of them. Bowser Jr. throws out something else. I think only Bowser Jr. throws hammers. Bowser Jr. throws out shells. But on the ground, they throw out hammers on the ground, but not within their shell. Not within in any vehicle, for that matter. You also have Boom Boom, which we'll switch back to the base game for this. Boom Boom is just a standard boss enemy that you have in the game. So, Boom Boom, in this case, can be normal Boom Boom or Big Boom Boom, which doesn't really change it that much. Or you can add wings to Boom Boom, which is a completely different fight. But Boom Boom's generally easy to defeat. Wing Boom Boom fights this way. I died. That was not supposed to happen. But Wing Boom Boom fights that way, where they fly around the screen trying to attack you. The more damage they've received, the faster they begin flying. So by the time you hit the 3rd phase, they're practically zipping around everywhere. So we'll let them get to the 3rd phase. And now they start flying really quickly. Now, you could also add enemies to other enemies. I mean, there is somewhat of a limit, but you could stack enemies on top of enemies. If you so choose. You can even stack cannons on top of each other as well. So you can do this, and you can add as many enemies as you want to. Add almost as many enemies as you want to pretty much any other enemy. Additionally, we have the sun and this Mecha Koopa. The sun will chase you around the stage, so it will oscillate back and forth around the stage. So these are great for desert levels. Also, do keep in mind if you have auto scroll or you have the wall blocking, make sure that the way you design your level, you're not having the sun just camp there. That might be a problem. But overall, that's what you would be looking for. So if the sun were to swoop down, you would jump over it and avoid it. Now the sun can be changed into the moon, and that changes the theme. You cannot have the sun at night, and you cannot have the moon during the day. The sun does lethal damage to you. The moon, however, deletes all enemies on screen and gives you a point value. So we'll get Attack of the 5 Boom Booms going. And all enemies go away just like that. You can use a moon sparingly, but you can only have one on the map at one time. Mecha Koopa, this was added in, I believe, a 2020 update. So they gave this character, this enemy, 3 different attack modes. They gave them laser, but they give a rocket first and then they give laser. They all act differently. They follow you. The normal one follows you, and then the red one fires rockets at you. The blue one fires the laser in your direction. The laser can, if the Koopa is large enough, it can break through blocks. So, if the Mech Koopa is large enough, it does break straight through blocks. Now, for additional enemies here, wrapping up now. We didn't cover Boo. Boo, we already did mention it following you, but Boo Ring is also a thing. When you add Boo Ring, you have a ring of Boos that just hovers around the same area consistently. You can add these to tracks, and if you make it big, and with wings, make it big, it doesn't change it, it just makes it larger. But adding wings does change the Boo Ring, because it changes the diameter, the radius of the ring over time, and the Boos generally move faster. Generally. Lava bubbles go up and down up the screen, so if you place a lava bubble up here, it will come back to that same position at the end of the level. Now, it can be affected by lava rising. That does affect where the lava bubbles can go back up to if they had a lower height than this. But the lava bubbles will always go back up to their highest position that they were placed within the editor. Now we have Koopalings here. All the Koopalings have their own separate attacks. So I can just put them all side by side so you can see them. So all the Koopalings have different attacks. Morton is different. Morton has an attack where he ground pounds and he emits light that travels on the ground, and if you're on the ground when he ground pounds, you get stunned. And then if he ground pounds, you see the magic go away. All Koopalings have a shell form before they respawn. They come out the shell, and they all die in 3 hits. That's Morton. Roy pops out of surfaces. So Roy can pop out of a surface like this. He doesn't have his bullet bill from the Wii U, but pops out of surfaces and can jump onto you, so he can be quite tricky. Lemmy is similar to how they operated in New Super Mario Bros. U. They spawn balls that bounce you back. These can be quite problematic depending on how you design levels. So if you have a lot of spikes around, you can use Lemmy's balls that they spawn to box you into an area that kills you. Wendy emits ice rings, I believe. No. They have rings that bounce off of surfaces. Otherwise, she jumps around a lot. But her attacks are not too advanced. Even in phase 3, their attacks are pretty lackluster, I would say. So, they just jump around. There's not too much unique. It's not too much about Wendy in general. However, because Wendy does have ricochet off walls, you could use Wendy as a character that can box people in. Like if you have a small contained boss room, for example, you can use that as a way to just box players in, so where they do actually hit the rings by accident. Iggy runs around and it's generally erratic, but not too many changes for him. So, Iggy doesn't have too much going on. Larry is a vanilla Koopaling. He doesn't have much going on. He jumps around a lot, but then he just shoots again. There's not too much that Larry's up to. Now, when you do attack them, they get more attacks later. But the biggest, the most unique Koopaling with the most attacks is Ludwig, by far. Because Ludwig can attack in 3 directions and can fly. If you give them wings, they can fly. So, do that right now. Ludwig can fly if you give them the right capabilities, where they just fly above you. So Ludwig is the hardest to deal with. And you can make your attacks really... his attacks really powerful if you combine them with other stuff on screen, like bullet bill blasters, etc. And they have a very fast attack speed compared to the rest of them. Twisters are good at lifting you up above objects, for example. So Twisters are good at lifting up, good at pushing you into spikes, for example. They're also good at lifting up enemies. If we would put a stationary enemy relatively. I don't know if these will move, but we'll see. Yeah, so Muncher will move. The Twister will generally move enemies, and it'll move you almost straight up, and it basically removes all your momentum. Twisters can be used in a variety of locations. So you can use them on any bridges, you can use them to move things from place to place. You can use the on-off switches to move Twisters into position where you need them to move items. There's a lot that you can do with Twisters. Not as much as I can discuss right here, but basically Twisters could be used to move almost anything that you need into position. So let's say this was a spring. And then you have a lift here. You can get the general idea that you can move this around. I think the spring goes up maximum up there. And then you can use this lift to move that spring somewhere else. So lots as you can do. Springs also, well not springs, well it's trampolines, but trampolines also can be used sideways. And a sideways trampoline is good for not reducing speed during a speed run. It's good at bouncing people back, but it's also good at maintaining momentum as you move into a wall. So that was basically springs. We've got through everything here. I didn't go over keys too much. Keys, I'll go over this finally. Keys are basically what you need to access any locked door. So if I have a door that's locked here, I need a key to open it. So if I get a key, drag this to the end. If I find a key, which can be put inside of a block, keys can be put inside of a block. They can be put on enemies, like Bowser. So you can put a key in a block. You can hover over that block to remove the key from it. You can be put in enemies when you eliminate them. A lot of places you can put keys, or you can just put them out in the open. So that's what you can do with keys. Now you can have at most 8, not 8. You can have at most 8. Yeah, you can have at most 8 doors within a world. So you can have 4 in the main world and 4 in the subworld. So at most you can only have about 8 keys that help actually do anything on the map. That's all that you need. 8 keys maximum. I feel like there's some things I still didn't talk about. So talk about most of everything. I didn't talk about one-ways yet, but we'll get to them. So there are the last few enemies that do exist are burners, bill blasters, bonsai bills, and cannons. For cannons automatically just shoot within a given time frame. So if I just place a cannon there, the cannon will just shoot automatically on its own time. Cannons can be added to other enemies as well. That can be done. You can multi-stack cannons on top of one another. Cannons can become larger. A red cannon fires rounds faster than the black cannon does. A bullet bill blaster, on the other hand, fires bullet bills normally. But it doesn't just have to fire bullet bills. You can put almost anything inside of it. So if you want coins to be inside the bullet bill, it can shoot coins. If you want the shellmets, which are these, to be put inside, you can have them inside as well. Briefly, we'll talk about shellmets later when we're talking about water. So we'll use that in minor details wrapping up before we talk about uploading. So you can put pretty much almost anything within a bullet bill blaster. And when you make it red, you can adjust its height by holding over it and then adjusting the height. But if you make it red, you can make it fire whatever you put inside of it faster. Stand here. When you have one of the shellmets, either the metal one, or the buzzy beetle one, or the spiny one. The spiny one breaks 2 blocks, but the buzzy one doesn't. It protects you from damage that's coming from the top. That is an enemy that doesn't... That's from like an actual enemy, not a skewer or an obstacle, something like that. Last thing in the enemy section is burners. Burners come on occasionally and they emit fire over a 3-block radius. You can also change when they turn on. So when you see it's black, that means that when one burner is on, that one's off, and then that burner turns on its own. So you can make burners alternate, and then you could structure a level around that where burners alternate, and your character can only move while the burner is doing, while the burners are in X phase, for example. Now, for the amount of stuff that's left, there's bonsai bills, which bonsai bills, in this case, bonsai bills are just very large bullet bills that travel across the map. The black ones just move to the left, whereas the red ones will follow you. Since the red ones follow you, it is important to make sure you place them in a good position to where they will actually be a threat to the player. But overall, you don't see too many bonsai builds being used, but bonsai builds can be pretty fun depending on how you do it. Last thing I will also mention is the one-way wall. So the one-way wall, just in this case, the one-way wall prevents you from going back into it. So this one-way wall here, if I add it here, will prevent anything. Well, no, it's not going to prevent that, but it will prevent anything from... It'll prevent anything from going through it. Going back through it, rather. So if I have one here, and one here, then we have a box. You fall through here, it's guaranteed that you die. Because once you fall past it, there's no way out, you die. One-way walls can also be hidden behind doors as well. You can use a combination of that plus semi-solids to hide these. Sky doesn't have the best semi-solids, so I will use Ghost House. If you hold down semi-solids, you can change the color, as we mentioned earlier. But you can hide these with either, not semi-solids, you can hide them with brown, definitely. You can barely see it. So you can hide that to lock doors off once a player exits them, or when a player enters them, so the players can't go back, for example. You can also add blocks over doors to prevent people from going back in them. So you can have a block over the door when you start out. So, we use our setup here. So you can do that. But now if we were to try to go back, oh man, we'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of these, just to make it easier to show this. But generally, there's a block over it. It's easier to show with a muncher. Then you can't really go back. See? You can't go back now. So you can lock doors so where they seem fine, but when you try to go back through them, they just don't work. You can lock doors this way. But to track over them and just lock the door. You can also do something. You can also do that with on-off blocks. So you can put an on-off block here as well. So you can lock doors this... Well, no. You can't lock it that way. Wait, no. Can you place these over? Wait, no. They do overlap. I can't place it over here, though. Ah, I get it now. Oh, wait. You can't place them over doors, right? Can't place them over doors. Ah, they were smart with that. Either way, though, that's how you lock down a door. Now, some things I didn't mention. I finished pretty much everything. I didn't talk. Well, I did talk about fire bars, but I'll finish them. Fire bars, you can extend the fire bar this way, but you can also click on them to change the direction. That was something I didn't mention earlier. Now, I think we've finished pretty much almost everything. Now, in terms of power-ups, key coins. We'll mention these briefly because it's miscellaneous stuff here. And we'll talk about audio. The key coin, you can only have 5 per section, so you can only have 5 in the main world, 5 in the subworld, for a max of 10. You cannot place these in blocks, they have to be out in the open. But you can make challenges within your level to make sure it's hard to reach these places. So, you can make a jump difficult, or you can make, you have to jump off a certain enemy in a specific way to achieve a pink coin. And then when you have all the pink coins that you need, you automatically get a key. Right? So you automatically get a key in that situation. Great for Easter egg levels, or levels like what I like to make, where you can make a story level where it's a difficult level and then there's side missions to get the true ending or something like that. Now you have Yoshi eggs. When we add a mushroom to it, you get a large Yoshi egg, and you get 2 Yoshis from that. Actually, you get Fire Yoshi. Fire Yoshi is a thing in this game. Yoshi has these main mechanics. You can ground pound with them. If you hold B, you can flutter jump. You can make a lot of courses like it. Where Yoshi is needed to either jump and reach an area where you have to sacrifice them, or it's required to eat obstacles. Yoshi is not in every single installment. So, if I were to switch to Super Mario Brothers, you get the boot in these levels. It's the boot. The boot behaves differently. The boot you can jump with, and you basically can ignore munchers entirely with them. Now, there's also the red version of the shoe, and you have the red version. You can do an attack, but I forgot how to do it. Forgot how to do the attack. I wish I remembered how, but there was a boot attack that you could do. Unless that's only something that you could do in Mario Brothers, which I hope is not. Hey, maybe it was here. I don't remember how to do it. Let me check Yamamura's dojo. This, switching to Yamamura's dojo, this is a good place for maker lessons. Maybe not as in-depth as what I've basically gone over, but it should be slightly more entertaining. I'm just looking at the attacks up here. I remember there was that ground pound that you could do with the shoe. Apparently that's not there anymore. But each style does have their own costumes and their own power-ups. I won't get into all of them. If you're doing SMB 1, you do have Super Mario Bros. 2 Mushroom, which basically changes the game completely. So if you have this, you can ride on top of enemies. This changes the game in a whole new way. You can throw stuff. You can pick up anything, almost. Get new music. You can also be Link as well. I think you have to switch the mushroom over into the ninja sword. But you can become Link as well. So you could switch to be Link. There's a lot of different things you can do. So Link has its own attacks. If you're going to build a level around Link, you have to keep in mind that you have a character that has range. So they have a range attack. So if you want to make specific levels based around that, the bomb, arrow, a shield, a charge that allows you to jump off things. You can make a lot of different levels with all the power-ups here. That's why I'm not going over all of them. But for simply building a level, the main takeaways that you need to take away from this video, you need to build a level that makes sense with your theme. Get an idea for your level. Use the correct enemies that fit your level design. And then at the end, make your level look good for how you want it to be aesthetically. And just make sure everything is balanced and you can actually clear check your level. The last thing I'll mention to end this 2-hour video is going to be sound. So sounds you can add to pretty much any character or anything. You can attach a sound to yourself. And this sound will basically be playing for the entire time that you're playing the game. But that's if you attach it to you. There's also boss music. Any music will automatically play. Any music that you have automatically plays. So you have the boss music, you have the peaceful music, which changes depending on your character and what you are at that time. And then you have sound effects. So laughing will just spawn wherever you hit, whenever you hit something. I find that the crowd laughter is way better when you fall off into a cliff, because then your death is delayed. Your death is delayed and you get to hear the full sound effect. But there are a lot of sound effects. I believe you have all of them from the base. But you can add any of these sounds to do what you want. So if you want to invoke a certain feeling, you can place sounds on blocks or on specific areas of the course you move through. If you want to add these to obstruct player vision, you can do that. You can use claps or cheers to cheer up the player. So you can add sound effects to your player. There's ninja attack. There's a lot of different sound effects. How you layer them and the way you want to use them is up to you. But some work better than others. So for example, if you're entering a door, not that way, but when you're exiting a door or entering a pipe, you can add that sound effect. And it should always ring true. If you add doom to your character and you crouch or you fall through an area, you'll get a special sound effect for your character, which is basically evil laughing at you. But I think if you have the sound on you, just normally, it will sometimes trigger, but not always. It's more when you fall into a place. I think it would be better to distribute it this way. So that'd be Doom. Glory is often used when people achieve something. You have all these sound effects here that you can use. Woozy changes the environment, distorts the sound. So if you want to distort the sound and make the player confused, you can do that. There's just a lot of stuff, a lot of sound effects that you can use to make your level feel better. Okay guys, that wraps up this tutorial. You can also have these musics here, but that wraps up this tutorial. With all the information I provided you in this video, you should be able to know how to make your levels now and how to use pretty much everything. The final thing I'll go over before you go is how to actually save your level. So you click Save As, in this case, and then you click on a location in CourseBot. You type in the name for your level and you just save it. And then when you want to upload it, you just make sure you clear check the level by going. Hold on, let me show you. You make sure you clear check the level by going to level in CourseBot, going over to it, hitting play, and then clear checking it. And then from there, once you clear check it, you can upload it to CourseWorld. Alright, I hope this video was helpful. Please leave a like, and if there's anything I missed, please do let me know. I will make a video about how to make a super world in another video, but this will be simply for level making. Thank you for watching.